When the heavy oak doors of the courtroom closed behind me, I felt the air inside was colder than outside. That day, my wife Eleanor had not only filed for divorce, but also accused me of being inadequate, both as a father and as a husband. Every word that came out of her lawyer's mouth felt like a sledgehammer blow to my crippled leg. She was demanding not only the home I had devoted years to, but also sole custody of our daughter, the sole meaning of my existence. Standing in the middle of the room, leaning on my cane, trying to hold my dignity, that familiar thin voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Your Honor, may I show you something my father doesn't know?" Welcome to Walter's Stories. I share new life stories here every day. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed to my channel and liked my video. Now, let's get back to my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you listen to the end. This voice belonged to our 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The judge looked up in surprise over his thick-rimmed glasses and shook his head slightly. Lily stepped forward with tiny steps, raised her old tablet with its cracked screen into the air, and pressed the play button with her trembling finger. When the video started, everyone in the room held their breath. But wait. To understand the weight of that moment, I need to take you back to where this ending began. To that gray morning. That morning, in our house in Willow Creek, technically registered in Eleanor's name, but every corner and every sill of which I had designed with my own hands during my healthier days, began like hundreds of other mornings. I, Arthur Vance, had awakened long before dawn. The familiar ache in my right leg was like my most reliable wake-up call. As I got out of bed, I put on my metal-braced knee brace and grabbed my cane. The dull thud of the cane hitting the floor echoed the rhythm of my loneliness in the house's silence. I was in the kitchen. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the delicate scent of lavender fabric softener seeping from the laundry room. I tried to move quickly, but my disability exacted a toll with every step. I hobbled over to the counter. Over the years, to avoid disturbing my wife Eleanor's delicate peace, I had learned to glide through this house like a ghost, making no noise. But this was not a peaceful silence. It was the eerie stillness of a perfectly preserved, untouchable museum. I remembered that damn construction accident I had at the peak of my architecture career. The day I fell from the scaffolding, I lost not only my leg, but also my authority at home. "Lily needs a solid foundation, Arthur," Eleanor said, looking at me with pity in the hospital room. Back then, I mistook that look for compassion. You can't run around construction sites anymore. You run the house. Your drawings are only beautiful on paper now anyway. My hands, which once built skyscrapers, now only flipped omelets and folded laundry. My designs, along with my dreams, were locked away in damp boxes in the basement. At exactly 6 a.m., I heard footsteps coming from upstairs. Eleanor descended the stairs. She was wearing a custom-tailored suit worth a fortune. She was the embodiment of success, power, and icy detachment. When she saw me, a man in an apron holding a cane, I caught that micro-expression on her face. Disgust. I placed her perfectly brewed black coffee and her perfectly cooked onion omelet in front of her. It wasn't an act of love. It was a survival ritual. Eleanor sat down, brought the cup to her lips without looking at me. Her gaze slid over me as if I were some unnecessary, slightly damaged piece of furniture in the room. "The coffee tastes a bit metallic today," he said, his eyes fixed on the stock market charts on his tablet. That tone in his voice screamed that I was inadequate again, that I had failed again. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I just changed the filter. Maybe that's why," I mumbled. My voice was tired from trying to meet his impossible standards. My leg was throbbing, but I remained standing, leaning against the edge of the table like a servant awaiting the next command. The silence between us was so thick and cold that even the coffee's steam seemed afraid to rise. "Is Lily awake?" she asked, without looking away from the screen. She resembled a project manager, not a mother. "Yes, she's getting dressed. She'll be down in a minute." Minutes later, the sound of irregular, cheerful footsteps echoed on the stairs. The only real, living sound in this house. Our 7-year-old daughter Lily burst into the kitchen like sunshine, dressed in her private school uniform. "Good morning, Mommy. Good morning, Daddy," she chirped. First, she planted a kiss on her mother's cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup, then ran and hugged my leg. Her care not to bump into my cane was a sensitivity a child of that age shouldn't have to learn. Eleanor finally put down her tablet and put on that social smile of hers, that sparkling mask she never showed me, only the outside world. "Good morning, Princess. Finish your breakfast. I'll take you to school today." "Yay!" Lily shouted. I felt a bittersweet sense of relief. At least in front of the child, she was keeping up the happy family act. As soon as Lily swallowed her last bite, Eleanor stood up with military precision. She grabbed her keys and gestured toward the door for Lily. And just like every morning, she didn't even glance at me as she passed by. No goodbye, no thank you, no farewell kiss. Just the sound of the door closing, and then the overwhelming, oppressive silence that engulfed the house. After they left, I returned to the vicious cycle that defined my days. Clearing the table, mopping the floors, that sharp pain in my knee as I bent over, sorting the laundry. I did everything with obsessive perfection. If the house was flawless, if the meals were wonderful, maybe Eleanor would look at me with respect, just once like she did in the old days. This was my silent plea to be seen. But there was one thing I had forgotten. Eleanor was no longer the woman I had fallen in love with. She was just a machine thinking about her next promotion. And in her eyes, I was just a crippled accessory keeping the household running. Lunchtime was the only time of day when the gray curtain of my existence lifted. Picking Lily up from school was that brief moment when my soul could breathe. I leaned against the iron railings in front of the school gate, shifting the weight of my cane to my left side as I waited. The other parents, smartly dressed mothers and fathers on business calls, stood a little apart from me, as if an invisible wall separated us. Perhaps it was my disability, or perhaps the deep melancholy etched on my face that pushed them away. I didn't care. When the bell rang, I searched for those familiar blonde curls in the flood of children pouring out of the school gate. She saw me. She wanted to run to me, but knowing I couldn't run to her, she slowed her steps and came to me with a huge smile on her face. "Daddy, I talked about you in art class today," she chirped, throwing her arms around my neck. Even though I staggered slightly to keep my balance with my cane, her warmth swept away all the aches in my leg. "Really? What did you say?" I asked, taking her hand and walking slowly toward the car. "I said you make the best omelet in the world, and that instead of drawing houses, you now fill them with love." My eyes filled with tears. This innocence, this pure love, was the antidote to the toxic atmosphere Eleanor had created at home. In those moments, I wasn't the useless husband. I was just Lily's father. A few weeks before this divorce nightmare, by a strange twist of fate, I had encountered a ghost from my old life. In a deli in the city center, while searching for a special cheese, a hand on my shoulder startled me. Arthur? My God. Is that you? When I turned, I saw Marcus, my closest rival in college, now an award-winning architect who was changing the city's skyline. His eyes first fell on my face, then involuntarily drifted to my cane and my limping leg. The pity in that look felt like a punch to the gut. Marcus, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's been a long time. You look like you've seen a ghost, my friend, he said, and hugged me tightly. What happened to you? And why aren't you in the business anymore? Your drawings were better than all of ours. A bitter smile settled on my lips. Life happened, Marcus. The pier accident. Then priorities changed. I'm a full-time dad now. Marcus scrutinized me with an architect's detail-oriented eyes. He saw my exhaustion, that air of resignation that had settled over me. But he also noticed the shopping cart in my hand. Listen, he said, pulling a sleek business card from his jacket pocket. I'm opening a new art gallery. There's a big gala next week, but the catering company bailed at the last minute. I remember your food being as flawless as your architectural drawings. No one forgot those pasta dishes you made in the student dorm. Want to save your hands from rusting? Just 200 people, chic boutique snacks. What do you say? I hesitated. I don't know, Marcus, Eleanor. Eleanor has nothing to do with this, Arthur, he said sharply. This is your talent. You still have that magic in your hands. Only the ingredients have changed. Dough instead of concrete, spices instead of steel. Do it. For yourself. That encounter was the first crack in the thick wall of numbness surrounding me. After that day, I began secretly experimenting in the kitchen. Cooking was no longer a chore, but an art I had rediscovered. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the courier's motorbike as we arrived home. As Lily took off her shoes, the man at the door called my name. Mr. Arthur Vance, you have a package. I frowned. I hadn't ordered any ingredients for my secret cooking experiments. Leaning on my cane, I went to the door. He handed me a thick, brown envelope with no sender's address, only law office written in the corner. The envelope was heavy. But the weight didn't come from the paper. It seemed to come from the bad energy inside. What's that, Dad? Lily asked from behind me. Boring bills, sweetie, I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. Go change your clothes, and I'll make us a snack. When she went upstairs, my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst through my chest. I collapsed onto our cream-colored, spotless sofa, the sofa Eleanor hated anyone sitting on. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. They hadn't trembled this much since the construction accident. A stack of official documents fell out. When I read the title on the top sheet, my breath caught in my throat. Petition for dissolution of marriage and divorce. The world stopped. A thin, high-pitched ringing began in my ears. My eyes darted across the lines like escaping a fire. Plaintiff. Eleanor Vance, defendant. Arthur Vance, grounds. Severe incompatibility, failure to contribute to the marriage, and emotional inadequacy. A taste much more bitter than the morning coffee rose in my stomach. Failure. In this house where I had sacrificed my entire life, my pride, my career, and turned myself into a servant, I was being accused of failure. As I continued reading, each line felt like a whip lashing my back. Eleanor didn't just want a divorce. She wanted sole custody of Lily, the house, the car, everything. It was claimed that I was unable to work and emotionally unstable, and therefore incapable of caring for the child. She was erasing my existence. She was expelling me from my own life. The papers slipped from my hands and scattered on the floor. My cane clattered loudly onto the parquet floor, but I didn't have the strength to bend down and pick it up. What I felt in that moment wasn't just sadness. It was pure, burning anger. But this anger was drowning in the cold waters of helplessness. Just then, the sound of the front door key was heard. Eleanor. She had arrived hours earlier than usual. The door opened. She saw me there, sitting among the wreckage of my life scattered on the floor, my cane on one side, my dignity on the other. There was no surprise on her face, not even a shred of guilt. Only the cold, calculating gaze of a player who had successfully completed a chess move. She calmly took off her heels, walked towards me, and glanced at the petition on the floor. What? What does this mean, Eleanor? I whispered. My voice was hoarse, a lump in my throat making it raspy. She shrugged. That gesture was more hurtful than any insult. Don't you understand what you're reading, Arthur? I'm tired of watching you play the victim in this house. It's over. It's over? I groaned, trying to stand up, leaning on the armchair for support. My leg was shaking. This house. Lily. I gave up my career. I kept this house standing at the cost of my leg. Kept it standing? She laughed, a cold, mocking laugh. All you did was spend my money and hobble around reminding me how self-sacrificing you were. Lily needs a strong father, Arthur. Not just a whiny cooking wimp. At that moment, I saw something in Eleanor's eyes that I had never noticed before. Pure hatred. She didn't just dislike me. She despised my very existence. You can't take Lily, I said, clenching my teeth. She approached me, the scent of her expensive perfume stinging my nostrils. But this time, there was something else beneath the scent. A heavy, woody, unfamiliar masculine perfume. I will, he whispered in my ear. My lawyer has everything ready. You'll leave this house penniless and alone. And you know what hurts the most? Even Lily will testify in court about how unstable you are. That night, our house in Willow Creek was as silent as a graveyard. When Eleanor went into the master bedroom and locked the door from the inside, the metallic click I heard was like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I took refuge in Lily's room. I sat down on the hard chair next to her bed, stretched out my prosthetic leg, and rubbed my aching knee. Lily was sleeping soundly in the dim light of her pink night lamp. Her breathing was the only real thing in the world. Eleanor's poisonous threat echoed in my mind. Even Lily will testify against you. How could she turn my own daughter against me? How could a mother become so corrupted that she would use her child's soul as ammunition in this war? Despair hung in the air as thick as the room itself. It burned my lungs, suffocating me. The next morning, when the sun rose, a terrifying normality reigned in the house. Eleanor moved about the kitchen as if nothing had happened. She woke Lily, prepared her favorite cornflakes. I sat on my stool in the corner, like a ghost whose presence was tolerated. When Lily asked why my eyes were bloodshot, Eleanor replied with a sharp voice, like she was plunging a knife into butter. Your father's leg is hurting again, sweetie. He's a bit sensitive these days. He needs to rest. The false compassion in her voice was more humiliating than an open insult. When they walked out the door, the first thing I felt was panic. Pure animal panic. I had to fight. I had to rescue my daughter, this princess trapped in an ice castle. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop. I started researching divorce lawyers. The numbers that appeared on the screen made my head spin. Hourly rates, consultation fees, filing costs. And I had nothing in my pocket except a few coins left over from grocery shopping. For years, Eleanor had been the household's financial manager. She only gave me a weekly allowance for kitchen expenses. My only hope was our joint savings account. The account we called our emergency fund, where I had deposited the compensation from my architecture projects before the accident, and my savings. I logged into the banking app. As I typed in the password, I felt my fingers go numb. Balance. $0. I blinked and looked at the screen again. It had to be wrong. I refreshed the page. Again. But that zero remained there, staring back at me like a grinning skull. I clicked on the transaction history. My hands went cold. Over the past 6 months, large sums of money had been withdrawn at regular intervals and transferred to offshore accounts I knew nothing about. The last transaction had been made just 3 days ago. The account had been completely emptied. This wasn't a momentary fit of rage. This was a cold-blooded execution planned months in advance. Eleanor wasn't just leaving me. She was throwing me into the middle of a battlefield, hungry, thirsty, and unarmed. She had drained the blood from my veins so I couldn't defend myself, couldn't hire a lawyer. I slammed my fist on the table in anger, but the sound was weak. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed. As a man, as a father, I had never felt so helpless. Then I remembered the antique watch my father had left me. I rushed to the secret drawer in the bedroom. It was empty. She had taken everything. Desperately, I called Marcus. My voice trembled as I explained the situation to him on the phone. The words caught in my throat. "Arthur, calm down," said Marcus, his voice thick with shock. This is madness. I can send you money right away, but Eleanor could use it against you. She could say, he's living on credit. What am I supposed to do, Marcus? I'm broke. She'll take Lily. I'll give you a name, Marcus said. Silas Thorne. He has an office in a building about to collapse in the old part of town. He doesn't wear expensive suits or use fancy words, but he's like a pit bull, Arthur. Once he bites, he doesn't let go. Go tell him everything. He won't worry about the money. I took the last of my money and hailed a taxi to the gray, forgotten part of town. The address was an old office building with crumbling bricks and a sign at the entrance reading, "Elevator out of order." I didn't care that my legs screamed with every step as I climbed to the second floor. Silas Thorne's office was the complete opposite of Eleanor's sterile world. The interior smelled of old paper, tobacco cologne, and dust. The desks were piled high with files. Thorne was in his 60s, his face lined with deep wrinkles, his eyes sharp as flint. He listened to me. He never interrupted. He just glanced occasionally at my cane and my trembling hands. When I finished my story, he leaned back in his creaking leather chair and took a deep breath. "Son," he said, his voice raspy like a car wheel rolling over gravel. "Your wife doesn't just want a divorce. She wants to destroy you. This isn't a separation case. It's an annihilation operation." "I know," I said, wiping the tears from my eyes. "I don't care about property, Mr. Thorne. He can have the house, the car, the money. I just want my daughter, but I have no money. I don't know how I'll pay you." Thorne took off his glasses and looked at me for a long time. There was no pity in that look. It was the recognition of one warrior's wounds by another. "We'll talk about the money later," he said. pushing the file on the table aside. Right now, we're racing against time. Who did you say Eleanor's lawyer is? Dalton Reed? He scowled. That man isn't a lawyer, he's a licensed shark. He plays dirty. He stood up, limping. His leg was slightly lame, too. Went to the cabinet and pulled out a file. A copy of the summons from Reed's office. Let's see what you've got. He flung the file at me. I opened the cover and my blood ran cold. The first page was filled with photos taken inside our house. Mountains of dirty dishes piled up on the kitchen counter. Toys scattered across the living room floor. An overflowing trash can. This is a lie, I shouted, jumping to my feet. These photos, they're from 2 months ago when I had a bad case of the flu. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. My fever was 104 degrees. Eleanor stayed at the hotel instead of helping me. When she came home, instead of giving me a glass of water, she took photos? Exactly, Thorne said calmly. He staged a scene to prove you're a slovenly, inadequate father who can't run a household. A fact without context is the biggest lie, Arthur. My horror grew as I turned the pages. Credit card statements, meals at luxury restaurants, expensive jewelry, designer clothes. It was all charged to my card, but I'd never even walked past those restaurants. I didn't spend that money, I said, my voice breaking. He always carried the card. He'd say it was business expenses. But your name is on the statement, Thorne said. On paper, you look like a deadbeat husband living off his wife's money and luxury. Then we came to that damn report at the bottom of the file. Thorne pointed to it. Dr. Adrian Blackwood, child psychologist, expert report. When I read the report, my world went dark. Dr. Blackwood claimed to have observed Lily and me secretly. The report stated, the father figure, Arthur Vance, exhibits deep anger management issues and emotional instability stemming from his physical inadequacy. He exhibits impatient, aggressive, and neglectful behavior toward the child. It is imperative that the child be separated from the father for her psychological development. I don't even know this man, I cried. I never raise my voice at Lily. This is slander. Thorne leaned over the table, his eyes blazing. This is where our battle begins, Arthur. Because we're not just facing a divorce case. We're facing a bought system, a fabricated reality, and a gang trying to steal your paternity. When I left Attorney Silas Thorne's dusty office, I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. The thought of continuing to live under the same roof as the person orchestrating my destruction, the woman trying to bury me alive, turned into a silent torture. Our home was no longer a haven. It was a minefield. Eleanor twat Simon to the guest room to maintain a superficial civil distance, but her presence permeated every corner of the house like a poisonous jet. I had to sit at the same table as my enemy, breathe the same air as her, and worst of all, act as if everything was normal in front of Lily. During those days, Eleanor changed her strategy. She was no longer just cold. She had started playing the role of the superhero mom in Lily's eyes. She was pushing me into the role of a passive, inadequate, and boring extra. One evening, she came home much earlier than usual. She had a huge gift box with a shiny ribbon in her hand. At that moment, I was in the living room, folding laundry with my legs stretched out. When Eleanor walked in, the gap between my house husband look and her stylish work clothes seemed deeper than ever. Lily, look what Mommy brought you, she called out. Her voice was so artificially cheerful that my stomach clenched. Lily ran down the stairs. Her eyes lit up when she saw the box. Is this for me? Yes, princess, said Eleanor, opening the box and giving me a triumphant look from the side. It's the latest model tablet. The old one was too slow and the screen was cracked. This is the best one on the market. I've even loaded your favorite games onto it. Lily hugged her mother happily. Thank you, Mom. Eleanor held our daughter in her arms, fixing her gaze on me. That gaze held the coldness of an executioner. You see, don't you, sweetie? She said to Lily. But she was really talking to me. If you live with your mother, your life will be full of surprises like this. But if you live with someone who just cleans and has a sore leg, well, then you'll have to make do with old toys. My hands froze on the folded t-shirt. I was clutching the fabric so tightly I could tear it. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, to throw this disgusting manipulation back in his face. But Thorne's warning rang in my ears. He'll provoke you, Arthur. He'll do anything to make you angry. If you explode, you'll just give him new evidence for that report. Stay calm. I swallowed hard. I buried my anger in that deep well inside me and quietly continued folding laundry. The torture continued at the dinner table. That evening, I had made Lily's favorite baked pasta. Eleanor picked up a fork, wrinkled her nose, and pushed the plate away. Arthur, this is too salty, she said, in a voice Lily could hear. Are you trying to raise my blood pressure? Never mind. Forget it, honey, don't eat it. Tomorrow we'll order from that Italian restaurant you love so much. Your father's hand has been slipping lately. I took a bite of my own food. It tasted perfect. Just like always. But because of Eleanor's constant drip-by-drip poisoning, I had started to doubt my own palate. Later, when Lily sat down at the table to do her homework, I wanted to go over and help her. We enjoyed solving math problems together. But Eleanor immediately intervened, pulling up her chair and sitting between us. Let me explain it, Arthur. You're confused, and you're leading the child astray. The method you explained last time is very old. They don't teach it that way in schools anymore. Slowly, I felt myself becoming transparent in my own home. Arthur Vance was fading away, replaced by the puppet of an inept, sick man that Eleanor had created. Lily was caught in the middle of this conflict. Sometimes she would glance at me furtively, and I could see confusion and longing in her eyes. She wanted to hug me, but she was also captivated by the magic of the shiny gifts her mother had brought. A child's heart struggles to distinguish between bought love and real love. One night, I couldn't sleep. The suffocating silence inside the house kept me awake. As I limped down the hallway, I saw that Lily's door was ajar. I slipped inside. The room was filled with the scent of lavender and her beloved stuffed bear. Lily was fast asleep. On her desk sat Eleanor's latest model, a shiny tablet. The charging cable was plugged in, gleaming like a technological monument. I approached her bed to cover her up. That's when I noticed something strange. Lily's right hand was tucked under the pillow, her fingers tightly gripping a hard object. It wasn't her stuffed bear. I leaned in curiously. My heart skipped a beat. It was her old tablet. The corner of the screen was cracked, the case was covered in scratches, and the battery died quickly. With a $1,000 technological marvel sitting on the table, why was my daughter clutching this piece of junk in her sleep? For a moment, I wanted to wake her up and ask, but she was sleeping so peacefully that I couldn't bring myself to do it. Maybe it was just a childish attachment to an old object. Maybe there were photos on that tablet of times spent with her father, and she was holding on to them. I interpreted this as a sign of her silent love for me, and this thought soothed my soul like balm in the dark night. At that moment, I didn't know that Broken Tablet held a secret that would change our lives, that would destroy Eleanor's perfect castle of lies. I simply stroked my daughter's hair, kissed her forehead, and returned to my own hell, that cold room. But the storm was approaching. The breaking point came a few days later, on that gloomy afternoon when gray rain pounded the windows. I was waiting for Lily after school. I was going to make her the chocolate soufflé I had promised her. The school bell rang, and the children dispersed. 10 minutes passed, 20 minutes, half an hour. Lily wasn't there. Panic gripped me like a cold hand around my throat. I called the school office. "Lily's mother picked her up about an hour ago, Mr. Vance," said the secretary. The phone slipped from my hand and fell. Eleanor hadn't told me. I called her, but she didn't answer. I called again, but it went to voicemail. As the hours passed, the scenarios in my mind grew more terrifying. Had she been kidnapped? Was she being taken out of the country? In desperation, I paced the living room with my cane. With every step, my leg throbbed, and every passing second took a year off my life. At 9 o'clock in the evening, a car headlight appeared outside. The door opened. When the door opened, it was past 9 o'clock in the evening. As the cold air from outside filled the room, Lily's tired but excited voice echoed in the hallway. She entered holding a large stuffed animal with the Adventure Park logo and a balloon that was about to deflate. Behind her, Eleanor walked with the air of a goddess of victory, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. "Where were you?" I shouted. My voice trembled with the fear and anger that had been building up for hours. I was leaning so hard on my cane that my knuckles had turned white. "How could you take him without telling me, Eleanor? I'm going crazy here. I was about to call the police." Lily flinched at my shouting and clung to her mother's leg. Eleanor looked at me with disgust, as if staring at mud stuck to her shoe. "Mom took me to Adventure Park, Daddy. We rode the roller coaster and ate cotton candy. It was so much fun," Lily interjected, but her voice was nervous. Eleanor stroked Lily's head without taking her eyes off mine. "Did you hear that, Arthur? We had fun. I'm her mother. I don't need your permission to take my daughter wherever I want. Besides," she threw her bag into the cloakroom. "What good are you here anyway, worrying and playing the victim?" "You could have texted me," I said, my anger giving way to hurt. "You could have just said, 'We'll be late.'" "Why?" She laughed, a cold laugh. "So you could ruin our day with your endless dramas?" "My leg hurts, it's raining, be careful." "You're so boring, Arthur. That's the problem." At that moment, he walked towards me. There was only a step between us. And then that smell hit my nose. This wasn't Eleanor's usual delicate floral perfume. Beneath it lay a heavy, overpowering woody scent, cedarwood and musk, an expensive aftershave and cigar blend. This scent wasn't mine. This scent didn't belong to anyone I knew. This was the scent of betrayal. "You," I whispered, my eyes widening in horror. "You're with someone else." Eleanor caught my gaze. She wasn't afraid. She didn't back away. Instead, a devilish smile appeared at the corners of her lips. She waited for Lily to run off to her room with her new toys. When the hallway cleared, she took another step towards me. Her face was so close to mine I could feel her breath. "Really, Arthur?" she whispered. Her voice was as burning as acid on skin. "Did you think I'd spend the rest of my life with you? A half-man, confined to the house, dependent on a cane, whose only achievement is salting the pasta." I froze. A half-man. Those words cut deeper than my leg injury, cutting into my soul. There are real men out there, Arthur, she continued, pouring out her venom. Men who rule life, who shape the world, who are powerful, not losers who sit at home all day crying over their fate. He is everything you will never be. Who's there? I asked. No sound came out. Only my lips moved. The air had been sucked out of my lungs. It's none of your business, he said, pushing past me. He's a bright mind, a winner, not a loser like you. I watched him climb the stairs. I had made peace with my physical disability, but this, the humiliation of my manhood, my honor, nailed me to the spot. That night, our bedroom door was locked again. But this time that lock sealed not just a door, but the last shred of hope left in our marriage. At midnight, I sat in the dark in the kitchen. I wasn't even crying. I was just staring into the void. I heard Lily's footsteps. She came over to me, sleepy-eyed, looking so vulnerable in her pajamas. "Daddy?" "I'm here, Princess," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Why aren't you asleep?" She came over and climbed onto my chair. She rested her head on my chest. She was playing with the button on my shirt with her little fingers. "Daddy? Are you really sick?" The question struck my brain like lightning. "What?" "No, sweetie. It's just my leg. You know, an old accident." "No, I don't mean your leg," Lily said, looking at me. There was a worry in her eyes that a child her age should never have to carry. Mom said you're sick inside. Your soul. That's why you're always sad. That's why you sometimes yell. She said if I live with her and her new friend, you'll be able to rest and get better." My heart was shattered. Eleanor hadn't just betrayed me and stolen my money. She had planted that poisonous seed in my daughter's mind, the idea that I was mentally ill. She had portrayed me as a monster, a burden. I held Lily tightly. I held her so tightly, as if I could physically shield her from these lies. "Lily, listen to me," I said, looking into her eyes. The determination in my voice was my only strength at that moment. "I'm not sick. My soul isn't sick, and I just love you so much and I'm afraid of losing you. Sometimes people, adults, say things that aren't true to get what they want." "So my mom is lying?" she asked innocently. Saying yes to that question would leave her even more torn. Your mom sees things differently, sweetheart. But I promise you, I'm fine. And no matter what happens, your dad will always be there for you. But doubt, once planted, is a stubborn vine that takes root. I saw that shadow in Lily's eyes. She wanted to believe her mother, that superhero woman, but she also felt her father's love. This inner conflict weighed worlds on her tiny shoulders. The mediation meeting that took place a few weeks later was just a preview of the impending disaster. We were crammed into that small room in the city courthouse, with its flickering fluorescent lights, stuffy air, and the smell of old carpet. At the table were Silas Thorne and me. Across from us sat Eleanor and her lawyer, Dalton Reed. Reed, with his expensive Italian suit, manicured hands, and smug smile, was exactly the shark Thorne had described. The mediator, a weary government official, opened the file. "Yes, we're here to find common ground. Mr. Vance is seeking joint custody and reasonable alimony." Silas Thorne spoke up. "My client has been the child's primary caregiver. His physical condition does not prevent him from being a father. Joint custody is his natural right." Dalton Reed laughed as if he had heard a bad joke. He slammed the file down on the table. "There is nothing to negotiate," he said, his voice as sharp as a knife. "My client's position is clear. Arthur Vance is a bankrupt husband and father in this marriage. Dr. Blackwood's report is clear. His emotional instability and anger outbursts threaten the child." Eleanor wiped her eyes with the handkerchief she had brought with her. At that moment, she gave an Oscar-worthy performance. "I just want what's best for my daughter," she said in a trembling voice. "I loved Arthur, but he's not the man I knew anymore. For Lily's safety, I have to keep her away from her father. This is very difficult for me, too." My stomach churned. It was impossible to believe this woman was the same one who had called me a half-man that night. "If you insist, we'll go to court," Reed threatened. "And the evidence we have will ruin Mr. Vance. The photos, the witnesses. My client is being generous. Leave quietly, and maybe there will be something left of Arthur's honor." The mediation ended right then. Thorne put his hand on my shoulder as we left. "Get ready, son. The war is starting now, and it's going to be bloody." On the day of the trial, the sky was a leaden gray. Silas Thorne's warning echoed in my mind. "Whatever happens, keep your cool, Arthur. They'll do everything to make you look like a madman. Don't give them what they want." The courtroom, with its high ceilings, dark wood paneling, and heavy solemnity, seemed poised to crush me. At the other table, Eleanor wore a razor-sharp navy suit. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup simple enough to reinforce the image of a long-suffering, self-sacrificing wife. Next to her, attorney Dalton Reed grinned like a predator eyeing its prey. When the hearing began, the knot in my stomach rose to my throat. Reed filled the room with his voice as he delivered his opening statement. "Your Honor," he said, walking with confident steps, "we are gathered here today not for a simple divorce case, but for the safety of a child. My client, Eleanor Vance, worked day and night to support her family, while the defendant, Arthur Vance, refused to contribute to the marriage, neglected the household, and worst of all, exhibited a pattern of behavior that threatened the psychological development of their daughter, Lily." When it was our turn to speak, Thorne stood up. I was clutching my cane, trying to stand straight, but my leg was throbbing. "I object, Your Honor," said Thorne, his voice raspy but strong. "The picture painted here is a deliberate distortion of the facts. My client is a devoted father who, despite his work accident, single-handedly supported his home and child. The evidence presented as neglect consists of isolated snapshots taken out of context. But the evidence in Reed's hands was so visual and shocking that Thorne's words hung in the air. Those damn photos. The messy kitchen taken while I was burning up. The receipts for money I never spent. The judge took notes with an expressionless face. Then the moment arrived. Reed announced triumphantly, "The plaintiff calls to the stand Dr. Adrian Blackwood, an expert witness in child psychology." The back door opened. When I saw the man entering, a wave of unease I couldn't describe rose within me. Dr. Blackwood was a tall, fit man with impeccable attire, looking like he had stepped off a magazine cover. His gait exuded a world-weary confidence. He stepped to the stand, took the oath, and began speaking in that reassuring, professional baritone voice. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "For the past 3 months, without the court's knowledge, I have observed the father and child in their natural environment. My findings are unfortunately alarming." He looked me in the eye. There was no compassion in that gaze. There was the coldness of an executioner. "What did you find, Doctor?" Reed asked. "I detected a deep anger control disorder in Mr. Vance. likely stemming from his physical disability. He is intolerant and aggressive toward the child. Can you give an example? Certainly. A month ago at the city mall, Blackwood continued as if describing a scene from a movie. I saw the child approaching the escalator. Mr. Vance grabbed the child by the arm and yelled at him. The child was trembling with fear. This is a classic sign of a tendency toward physical and emotional abuse. Liar, I whispered, digging my nails into my palms. I remembered that moment. Lily was about to get on the escalator backwards, and I had caught her just in time as she was about to fall. My scream wasn't out of anger, but out of fear. I had saved her. Thorne squeezed my arm. Calm down, he said through clenched teeth. Blackwood continued. In another incident, in the park, Mr. Vance continued looking at his phone instead of rushing to help when a child fell from the swing. His indifference was clinical. Another lie. Eleanor had texted me the urgent, sending the grocery list, and Lily had stumbled while I was trying to answer my phone. I rushed over and picked her up. But this man was twisting the truth and turning it into a weapon. In conclusion, Blackwood said, lowering his voice and turning to the judge, granting Arthur Vance custody of Lily would cause irreparable damage to the child's mental health. I strongly recommend that full custody be granted to the mother. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. The judge's gaze turned to me. There was no longer doubt in those eyes, only judgment. As Blackwood stepped down from the podium and returned to his seat, he passed in front of our table. He paused for just a second, gave me a condescending look, and adjusted his jacket. At that moment, the world stopped. That scent that hit my nose, cedarwood and musk, a heavy, expensive, woody scent. It was the scent that clung to Eleanor, that foreign scent that emanated from her skin that night when she humiliated me by saying, "There are real men." Blood rushed to my head. The pieces fell into place in my mind like a puzzle. Dr. Blackwood wasn't just a hired witness. He was Eleanor's lover. The expert hired to destroy me was the man in my wife's bed. I growled, my voice trembling. I turned to Thorne. My eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Silas, that smell, the smell on Eleanor. This man is her lover. Thorne looked at me in shock. What are you saying, Arthur? Are you sure? I swear it, I shouted, unable to control my voice. The judge raised his head from the bench. Mr. Vance, silence! But I couldn't stop. This man is biased. This man is my wife's lover. They planned everything. Reed jumped to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. The defendant is desperately slandering a respected expert. Here is the living proof of the instability I mentioned in my report. Sit down, Mr. Vance, the judge roared. If you disrupt the proceedings again, I'll have you removed. Thorne grabbed me by the shoulder and forced me into my seat. Arthur, stop. You have no proof. If you just yell, you'll give them what they want. You'll prove you're crazy. Helplessly, I collapsed into my seat. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Across the table, I saw Eleanor and Blackwood exchange glances. They shared a vague, conspiratorial smile. The game was set, the trap was perfect, and I had fallen right into it. The hearing continued with Thorne's feeble objections, but the damage was done. In the judge's eyes, I was now a paranoid, unstable man who had shouted in the courtroom. On the way out, Thorne gathered his papers, his face grim. The smell issue, he whispered. If it's true, it changes the course of this case, Arthur. But how will we prove it? What do we have besides the scent of perfume? I don't know, I said, leaning on my cane. But Lily, Lily might know. She might have seen that man before. That's when it hit me. The old tablet under the pillow. Why Lily clung to that tablet so tightly. "Silas," I said, the despair in my eyes giving way to cold determination. "We need to call Lily to the stand tomorrow. I know it's risky, but it's our only chance." The next court date, it was my turn to take the witness stand. With each step, the metal tip of my cane clattered loudly on the floor, and everyone in the courtroom had their eyes on me. I took the oath and sat down. Silas Thorne began with gentle, open-ended questions to calm me down. As a disabled father, I described my daily routine, how I braided Lily's hair, how I prepared her favorite meals. I explained how I had been seriously ill the week those terrible photos were taken, how Eleanor had ignored my calls for help. My voice trembled, but I was telling the truth. Traces of sympathy appeared on the faces of some of the spectators in the courtroom. But when it was Dalton Reed's turn, the atmosphere suddenly turned icy. Reed approached the podium with a file in his hand. He had that poisonous, condescending smile on his face. "Well, Mr. Vance," he began, his voice cracking like a whip. "According to this touching story you've told us, you're an innocent, self-sacrificing father, and your wife is a diabolical genius who plotted $1 million conspiracy to destroy you. Is that right?" "I didn't say that," I replied, my throat going dry. "I just stated the facts." "But that's exactly how it sounds," said Reed, turning to the jury, though there was no jury, but he was putting on a show. "Your wife, a successful businesswoman, takes care of you, supports the household, but you blame her. Tell me, Mr. Vance, does your physical condition prevent you from working?" "I was an architect," I said, going on the defensive. "On construction sites." "That's not my question," Reed cut in. "Can't you work at a desk? Can't you draw? Or was it easier to sit at home on your wife's money and play the victim?" "It wasn't a choice. It was our mutual decision," I shouted. "Lily needed me." "Or did you need her?" Reed asked, lowering his voice. "Did you cling to the child to feel useful?" Thorne jumped to his feet. "Objection! He's harassing my client." "Objection sustained," said the judge. "Mr. Reed, watch your language." Reed smiled. He had gotten the reaction he wanted. "Very well. You claim you were sick when those photos were taken. Did you go to the hospital? Do you have a report?" "No. I took medicine at home. I didn't have the strength to get out of bed." "So there's no proof," Reed said, shrugging. "Just your word against very clear photographs. And the credit cards. Did you ever dispute them with the bank?" "No, I trusted my wife." "Blind trust or complicity?" Reed turned back to his desk and held up a large photograph. The moment I saw it, my blood ran cold. It was me in the photo. Taken in our bedroom, my face flushed red with rage, my mouth open as I screamed. My hands were in the air, looking like I'd lost control. Eleanor was in the corner of the frame, looking scared and cowering. "Explain this picture to us, Mr. Vance," Reed said triumphantly. "Isn't this exactly what Dr. Blackwood called dangerous rage attacks? This face, is this the face of a father you would entrust your child to? Or is it the face of an unstable man?" I began to tremble. I remembered that night. Eleanor had come home drunk, kicked my cane, and called me a parasite. She had humiliated me for hours, insulting my manhood. When I finally exploded, I didn't know she had secretly recorded me. "That night," I stammered. "That night she provoked me. She attacked me. This photo, it's a trap." "Another trap?" Reed laughed. "Everything is a trap. Everyone is your enemy. The extent of your paranoia is truly sad, Mr. Vance. No, I shouted, trying to stand up, but my cane slipped and I hit the podium. That woman is a liar, she and that doctor. Silence, roared the judge, banging his gavel. Mr. Vance, sit down. If you lose control again in this courtroom, I will render my verdict immediately. I collapsed into my seat. Reed straightened his jacket and delivered the final blow. I believe I have no further questions, Your Honor. The picture tells the whole story. When the hearing ended, Silas Thorne couldn't look me in the face as he stuffed his papers into his briefcase. It's over, isn't it? I asked, my voice sounding dead. I've lost everything. We still have a chance, Thorne said, but there was no conviction in his voice. We'll have Lily testify tomorrow. But Arthur, the judge is biased against you, unless Lily's testimony is miraculous. He didn't finish his sentence. He didn't need to. That night was the longest night of my life. Sitting on the cold tiles of the guest bathroom, I watched my life unravel. I thought about running away, leaving everything behind. I couldn't take this humiliation anymore. They had certified me as a half-man, but then Lily's face came to mind. I couldn't leave her with those monsters, Eleanor and her lover. I knew they would send her to boarding school, use her for money. I crawled through the darkness to Lily's room. I opened the door quietly. She was sleeping like an angel. I sat on the edge of her bed and stroked her hair. My tears silently rolled down my cheeks. "Forgive me, Princess," I whispered. "Your father couldn't protect you. I wasn't strong enough." Just as I was about to get up, I noticed that detail again. Lily had clutched that old, broken tablet she had tucked under her pillow tightly, even in her sleep. It was like it wasn't a toy, but a lifeline. Why? Why wouldn't she part with that tablet? What was inside it? Games? Our photos? Or something else I didn't know about? I leaned down and tried to gently take the tablet from her hand, but her fingers were clenched so tightly that I was afraid she would wake up, so I let go. I kissed her forehead. "Tomorrow," I said to myself. "Tomorrow, no matter what happens, you will know that I love you." When the day of the decision arrived, the courtroom was as cold as a morgue soul. My eyes were swollen from lack of sleep. Across the table, Eleanor glowed like a queen, certain of her victory. Beside her, Reed sat with the ease of a lion who had torn apart his prey. In the gallery, Dr. Blackwood had taken his place with that repulsive self-confidence. The judge entered. Everyone stood up. "Before announcing the verdict," said the judge, adjusting his glasses, "one final witness will be heard. At the request of the attorneys for the parties, it has been decided that the minor will be heard in person." The smile on Eleanor's face faded slightly. Reed shifted uncomfortably. The door opened. Lily entered, accompanied by the bailiff. She was wearing her school uniform. Her small frame seemed lost in the enormous courtroom, but there was a strange determination in her walk, and she was carrying something pressed tightly against her chest with both hands. That old tablet with the cracked screen. The silence in the courtroom was so thick you could hear the rustle of Lily's uniform. Her steps were small as she walked toward the bench, but the weight on her shoulders was heavy enough to crush an adult. My little girl stood alone in the middle of that enormous palace of justice, holding a broken tablet. "What's your name, sweetheart?" asked the judge, softening his voice. He pushed his glasses down the bridge of his nose and looked at her curiously. "Lily Vance, sir," said Lily. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were clear. "Why are you here, Lily?" What do you want to tell us? Lily took a deep breath. She looked at me first. Her eyes held pure love and a courage that said, "Don't be afraid, Dad." Then she turned to her mother. Eleanor's face was as white as chalk. She sensed that something was wrong, that a storm she couldn't control was approaching. "I want to show you something my dad doesn't know," Lily said. "I know everyone thinks my dad is a bad person. My mom and that doctor uncle say so, but that's not true." Attorney Reed jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is nonsense. We can't allow a little child to stall the court with a toy in her hand. It will only further damage the child's psyche." "Sit down, Mr. Reed," roared the judge. "I'm curious to see what the child has to show us. Bailiff, assist her with that device." The bailiff took the old tablet from Lily's hand and connected it to the giant screens in the courtroom. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I object!" she shrieked, her voice betraying her loss of control. "This is an invasion of privacy. We don't know what's on that tablet." "If you have nothing to fear, then there's no problem, Ms. Vance," said the judge sternly. The screen opened. The image behind the cracked glass was reflected on the monitors. It was a shaky handheld camera image. The camera angle was low, as if hidden behind a vase or piece of furniture. Two figures appeared in the middle of the living room. One was Eleanor, but it wasn't the victim in court. She had a wineglass in her hand and was laughing. The other was Dr. Adrian Blackwood. A collective gasp rose from the room. My paranoid delusion was staring back at me, vivid and bloody on the giant screen. Blackwood had his arms wrapped around Eleanor from behind, kissing her neck. "Did you see that, Silas?" I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy!" The voices in the video became clearer. "The plan is working perfectly, my love," Eleanor said, turning to Blackwood. "Arthur is so naive. He still thinks he can save our marriage. The fool." "What if he notices the money?" Blackwood asked. "He won't. I emptied the account and transferred it to your offshore account," said Eleanor, smiling triumphantly. "What will he do when he's penniless with that crippled leg? He'll crawl." A deadly silence hung in the courtroom. Eleanor covered her face with her hands. Reed seemed to want to bury himself in the files. But the video continued, and every second was another nail in their coffins. "What about custody?" asked Blackwood in the video. "Even crippled, he's still a decent father. The judge might take pity on him." "That's where you come in, Adrian," said Eleanor. "That report you wrote, the unstable anger management issues story. I'll provoke him. I'll make him yell. I might even push him to attack me. You'll dress it up with your professional opinion. No one believes an unemployed, disabled man. They believe a respected doctor." "I admire your intelligence," said Blackwood, and they clinked glasses. "What about Lily, then?" "Oh, she's a burden," said Eleanor, waving her hand. "Once we get custody, we'll send her to boarding school. Just keep her away from Arthur. I despise that man and his miserable life." The video ended with both of them laughing. When the screen went dark, the silence in the courtroom gave way to angry murmurs. The judge, his face flushed red with rage, slammed his gavel. "This," said the judge, his voice trembling. "This is the most disgusting, despicable conspiracy I have ever seen in this courtroom." He turned to me. There was deep apology in his eyes. Then he looked at Eleanor. That look was heavier than any sentence. "Mrs. Vance," said the judge in an icy voice, "do you have anything to say about these images, recorded in your own home by your own daughter?" Eleanor tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. It's a montage. It's fake, she stammered. But her voice was so weak she didn't even believe herself. Blackwood, meanwhile, was frozen. All that remained of that confident, arrogant man was a sweating, trembling coward. "Bailiff," ordered the judge, "hold the doors. No one leaves. This case, as of this moment, is no longer a divorce case, but a criminal case." Reed began gathering his briefcase. I had no knowledge of these, Your Honor. I only had the information my client gave me." "Sit down, Mr. Reed," shouted the judge. "The Bar Association will deal with you separately. Presenting false evidence and misleading the court. Welcome to the end of your career." I wasn't looking at the judge, or Eleanor, or that doctor. My eyes were only on Lily. I was looking at my daughter, standing tall on that little podium in the middle of that big world. She turned to me and smiled. I understood then. That tablet wasn't just a device she played games on. That tablet was her silent witness. That night, she had hidden behind the vase and recorded the injustice done to her father. She couldn't say, "My mother is lying," but she had kept the truth, thinking it might be needed one day. Under her pillow, on her heart, Silas Thorne touched my shoulder. His eyes were filled with tears. "We won, Arthur," he whispered. "Your daughter. The girl saved you." I got up from my chair, crying. I threw my cane aside. At that moment, my leg didn't hurt. Nothing hurt. Limping, stumbling, I ran towards Lily. She came down from the podium and ran towards me. In front of everyone in the hall, I knelt down and embraced my daughter. "Dad," Lily said, burying her face in my neck. "Thank you," I choked out. "Thank you for saving me, for believing in me, my princess." Our emotional embrace in the courtroom was interrupted by the judge banging his gavel 3 times. The sound cut through the buzz in the room like a knife. I stood up, holding Lily's hand tightly. I picked up my cane from the floor, but I was no longer leaning on it. I was just carrying it like an accessory. The judge took off his glasses and placed them on the table. The expression on his face had shifted from the previous bewilderment to a sharp determination. "This court," he said in a loud voice, "has heard many cases throughout my professional career. However, I have rarely witnessed such a calculated, such a vile conspiracy to tear a father from his child and destroy him." He turned to Eleanor. My wife, that unbreakable ice queen, was now a trembling wreck slumped in her chair. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance," the judge continued, "in light of the footage we just watched and your behavior in this courtroom, I am not dismissing your divorce petition on the grounds that you are the guilty party, because this case is no longer a divorce case. It is a crime scene investigation." He took a deep breath and announced his ruling. 1. Custody of the minor Lily Vance is hereby granted to her father, Arthur Vance, without dispute and effective immediately. The mother's visitation rights are suspended entirely until the next psychological evaluation. Lily squeezed my hand. I smiled at her. The nightmare was over. 2. Regarding Mrs. Vance and Dr. Adrian Blackwood, I am issuing an immediate arrest warrant for the crimes of aggravated fraud, inciting perjury, fabricating evidence, and attempting to fraudulently obtain child custody. Furthermore, a complaint will be filed with the Medical Association for the revocation of Dr. Blackwood's license. "No!" Eleanor screamed. "You can't do that. I'm a respectable businesswoman. I earned that money." "That money was earned within the marriage and was illegally transferred to be embezzled with your accomplice," replied the judge. "All your assets, including offshore accounts, have been seized. Every penny of that money will be traced and used as compensation for Mr. Vance and his daughter's future." The bailiffs and police officers at the door sprang into action. When metal cuffs were snapped onto Eleanor's delicate, manicured wrists, our eyes met. There was no remorse in her eyes, only the rage of lost power. "You!" she hissed at me as she passed. "You'll pay for this, Arthur. You're nothing." I looked at her. Once those words would have hurt me, but now I saw only a pitiable stranger before me. "I'm Lily's father, Eleanor," I said calmly, "and that's a title you'll never have." Dr. Blackwood couldn't even resist. His head was bowed as he was handcuffed, his charismatic mask completely fallen. Attorney Reed tried to gather his things and slip away, but Bar Association representatives were waiting for him at the door. When we left the courtroom, the air outside filled my lungs with a freshness I hadn't felt in ages. Reporters were at the door. The broken tablet case was already making headlines. But I didn't answer any questions. I just picked up Lily, ignoring the pain in my leg, and we walked to Silas Thorne's old car. "You did it, son," Thorne said as he started the car. "I told you, the truth has a nasty habit. It always comes out in the end." The following weeks passed like a fast-forwarded film reel. Eleanor and Blackwood's trial began. Most of the money stolen from the joint account was recovered from frozen accounts. The court ordered Eleanor to pay me substantial financial and moral damages. But the biggest change happened in that house in Willow Creek. When we first entered the house after the trial, that massive, flawless structure looked like a tomb to me. Eleanor's shadow lingered in every corner, and memories of my humiliation filled every room. That kitchen, the kitchen where I had worked like a servant for years, where every bite I took was counted. "Dad," Lily said, our voices echoing in the empty living room one evening. "Can't we just leave here? This place, it's still cold." She was right. No matter how much we heated it, we couldn't erase the lifelessness that permeated the walls of this house. The next day, I called the real estate agent. I put the house up for sale, along with its expensive, untouchable furniture. Eleanor's palace was just a pile of concrete for sale to me. The day we sold the house, as I locked the door for the last time, I felt a strange lightness inside. It was as if the invisible weight on my crippled leg had been left behind with the house. We found a ground-floor apartment with a garden in a more modest but green neighborhood of the city. It had 3 rooms, small but bright. Lily and I painted the walls together. She wanted to paint her room sky blue. I painted the kitchen yellow, the color of the sun. The first evening we moved into our new home, I was cooking in the kitchen. This time, it didn't have to be perfect. I could chop the onions a little thick. I could turn on the music and sing along. No one was standing over me criticizing me. No one was complaining about a metallic taste. The house was filled with the scent I'd missed for years. Peace. And of course, the smell of cinnamon cookies baking in the oven. The doorbell rang. I opened the door. It was Marcus. He had a box of chocolates and the keys to his new workplace. "Are you ready, chef?" he asked with a smile. "The gala is next week, and this time your signature will be on the menu." I smiled. I left my cane in the umbrella stand by the door. I no longer needed it inside the house. My home was no longer a place that held me back, but one that embraced me. "I'm ready, Marcus," I said. "More than I've ever been." It was a sunny afternoon, 3 months after the sentencing hearing. The gloom of those days had given way to the smell of freshly cut grass and children's laughter. We were in that little park near our new home. I was sitting on a wooden bench, my leg exposed to the sun's warming embrace. My cane was beside me, but it no longer seemed like a shackle. It was just a part of my lived experience, like the lines on my face. Lily was a few meters away, her hands in the soil, tending to the small hobby garden the city had set aside for children. She had a huge smile on her face and a sweet drop of sweat on her forehead. "Dad, look," she called, pointing at the soil. "The seeds we planted. They've sprouted." Leaning on my cane, I slowly made my way over to her. It was hard to kneel down, but it was worth it for this moment. I bent down and saw those tiny green shoots. "Did you see that, Princess?" I said, stroking her hair. "If you are patient and show love, life will spring forth even from the darkest soil." As I said this, we both knew I wasn't actually talking about plants. We sat silently for a while. We watched the other children running around. For weeks, ever since that day in court, there had been a question on the tip of my tongue, but I hadn't dared to ask it. I cleared my throat. "Lily," I said softly, "can I ask you something?" She put down the little gardening trowel in her hand and looked at me with those honest ocean blue eyes. "Ask, Dad." "That video," I swallowed. "Why did you record it? Why did you hide that old tablet under your pillow that night?" Lily thought for a moment. She narrowed her eyes as if weighing those memories in her mind. "Because," she said, choosing her words with an adult's seriousness, "because I didn't like Dr. Blackwood, Dad. He was fake." "What do you mean?" "He was very polite when you were there, smiling at you. But when you went to the kitchen or turned your back, his face changed. He whispered nasty things about you to Mom." He rolled his eyes. I looked at him in astonishment. I never thought a child could notice such subtle details. "And at the mall," he continued, frowning, "when you went to the bathroom, I heard him tell Mom that you were too slow, that you were a burden. That wasn't true, Dad. You're not slow, your leg just hurts." I knew he was lying. My eyes filled with tears. I had been so immersed in my own pain and feelings of inadequacy that I hadn't realized my daughter was my silent protector. "What about that night?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why did you record that exact moment?" "I had gone downstairs to show you the picture I drew," she said. "But I saw my mother come home with that man. They were laughing, but it was a bad laugh. I was scared and hid behind that big flower. You always used to tell me, if someone doesn't believe you, you have to show them the truth." A huge lump formed in my throat. I couldn't even remember when I had told her that. Maybe while reading a fairy tale, maybe while watching a movie. But she had taken that advice, engraved it on her heart, and used it at the right moment. My old tablet was with me. I was playing a game. When I heard they were hatching a bad plan, I pressed the button. I just wanted proof. "Then why didn't you show it to me sooner, sweetheart? Why did you wait so long?" Lily lowered her head and started playing with her fingers. "Because I was scared, Dad. Mom said that man would never let you know, that you're too naive. I thought you'd be upset if I told you. Or maybe you'd be angry with me." I hugged her tightly. "I'd never be angry with you, Lily. Never." "Then in court," he said, lifting his head and looking at me. His eyes were filled with tears. "When that judge uncle said you were a bad father, I understood they were going to take you away from me. My mother and that man were lying, but everyone believed them. I couldn't leave you alone, Dad. I had to show everyone that you weren't a bad man. You taught me to be honest, so I was honest." I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. For months, even years, I had felt inadequate, deficient, failed. I had a crippled leg, no money. My career was over. Eleanor had told me every day that I was nothing. But the biggest, most vivid proof that I wasn't a failure was standing right in front of me. I had raised a brave and conscientious child, with a sense of justice greater than her fear. A little girl who could stand up to a room full of adults, lawyers, judges, who could shout the truth. My legacy wasn't buildings, bridges, or bank accounts. My legacy was Lily. "Thank you, Princess," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "Not just for saving me, but for making me me again." "I love you, Daddy," Lily said, hugging my neck. Her dirt-covered hands stained my shirt, but I didn't care. It was the most beautiful stain in my life. "I love you too, Lily. More than anything." On the way home from the park, I got a message from Marcus. "Chef, the gala menu is approved. Customers keep asking about Arthur's special sauce filet mignon. Tomorrow is the big day. Be ready." I put the phone in my pocket and looked up at the sky. Arthur Vance was no longer just a crippled ex-husband. He was a leader, a father, and most importantly, the hero of his own story. My cane was still in my hand, but it was no longer supporting me. I was guiding it. And that's where my story ends, my friends. Remember that the darkest moment is just before the light. Sometimes life trips you up. Sometimes your loved ones hurt you. In those moments when you feel incomplete, half-baked, or failed, please remember Lily's little sprouts. With love and patience, hope sprouts even from the most cracked soil. I am Arthur. This was not the story of my silence, but of my echo. Thank you for being here and listening to my story until the end. If this story touched your heart, if you found a piece of yourself in Arthur and Lily's struggle, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Your support is a beacon of hope for everyone like us, trying to make their voices heard. In the comments, write about those little heroes in your life who saved you from the edge. I can't wait to read them. Until the next life story, stay in love, stay hopeful.